The fire hose of news from America can feel like a lot these days.
If you're trying to figure out what to make of it all, we got you.
I'm Katie Simpson.
And I'm Paul Hunter. We're correspondents here in Washington,
working just around the corner from where much of the action is taking place.
2 blocks from the White House.
And that's the name of our new podcast.
For top-notch analysis of U.S. politics from a Canadian perspective, find 2 blocks from the White House every Wednesday wherever you get your podcasts,
including YouTube.
Frequency Podcast Network. Stories that matter, podcasts that resonate.
Retiring in Canada is far more challenging than it used to be. That's according to a new survey from BMO. You don't just take your pension and head to the golf course anymore. We're living longer, and that means likely more healthcare expenses. Nearly half of the respondents in this survey also say they're planning to help their adult children financially, even if it means negatively impacting their own retirement plans. It makes you wonder if it really is harder for kids today. I'm Kris McCusker, and in this episode of The Big Story, we speak to John Sacke, investment advisor and portfolio manager for BMO Private Wealth. Thank you so much for joining us today to talk about this.
You're welcome.
Now, please, if you could, outline this survey on retirement. I'm curious in what you were looking to gauge. Was this something you already had an inkling was true and you were looking for confirmation, or were you just sort of throwing this out there to see what came back?
It's a great question, Kris, and thank you so much. What with life expectancy and longevity only increasing, and what with the costs of elder care increasing exponentially, it's something that Bank of Montreal is always very concerned with. And now, given that we're in a stage of high inflation, it's something that we're more and more concerned with, that we don't run out of money before we run out of time.
Because some of the findings, and this release outlines it in the headline, golden years losing their shine. So the golden years maybe not so golden. 2/3 believe saving for retirement is harder for them than it was for their parents. 77% worry saving for retirement will be harder for the next generation. So it feels a little bit like the landscape might be changing. Do you think that's fair?
Absolutely, and it's changed relatively rapidly. I take deep and intimate dives into the lives of our clients, into the lives of the general population, and what we're seeing comes as no surprise, but worth mentioning anyway, folks, is that generally speaking, people don't suddenly die. It's more the exception than the rule. We enter into a stage of health decline, and when in decline, costs increase, and they increase pretty quickly. And therefore, one needs to have money to support this. And the second thing that I'd put onto the table is that it doesn't really work to say, well, I'll be okay in retirement. We work hard. These are stressful times, whether you're entering the workforce or in sort of the back nine. And who just wants to be okay? And what does okay mean?
Yeah, that's true.
And it's all relative. I don't know anybody that just wants to eke by in retirement. Goes back to what I say to my clients all the time. Even an ounce of prevention is better than a pound of cure. And there's no question that certainly this generation, I'll speak for myself as well, we're the sandwich generation. And so you've got to be very careful that, again, you don't run out of money before you run out of time.
Because retirement used to be, I feel, a lot simpler. You were retired at 65 or sooner if you were lucky. And then you lived out your retirement with whatever you had saved. But as you outline, we're living longer, and sometimes there are health issues that require additional funds. But now on top of that, some of the older Canadians or people in retirement or close to retirement are also helping their adult children because life is a lot more expensive. Um, and that is something don't think you can plan for.
Correct. More so than ever before, the markets are very volatile, lots of ups, lots of downs. And among my statistically relevant client base, more clients than ever before are, one, supporting their parents, and or two, supporting their children. So it works both ways. And anecdotally, it used to be Freedom 55. Then it was Freedom 65. Then it was, well, I'll never retire. And BMO as a bank want to keep away from that type of a scenario playing itself out. It's disconcerting, it's frightening, and it creates unease.
Have you actually worked with clients who have delayed retirement because they are helping adult children?
Absolutely. It's more common than you think. And what with the cost of weddings being, dare I say, on the extravagant side of extravagant, you sort of start saving for your children's weddings when they reach the early teenage years. That's another expense that one has to plan for.
Do you think we're at the point where it needs to be viewed differently? I mean, the Canada Pension Plan may not survive forever. And things like defined pensions are sort of going the way of the dodo bird. So are you sort of advising clients maybe that things have shifted to the point where the planning needs to be different now?
Absolutely, Kris. These are new times, and planning is a significant part of the mix. Yes, it's all well and good to make 8%, 10%, 20%. There'll be a down market and up market, twists and turns in the road. But I think the tennis player Serena and Venus Williams' father, Richard, said it best. If you fail to plan, then plan to fail. Nothing's changed since those words were said. And in fact, it's come more under a microscope, the notion of financial planning. A lot more.
So what do you do? What are you advising? What is like a sure thing almost? I mean, I know money plus time equals retirement fund. But if you're low on time, what do you do?
It's a great question. And I'm reminded of the old adage that my late grandmother taught me: don't plant a tree when you're hungry. You're too late. It takes 20 years for it to bear fruit. And there comes a time when it's never too late, relatively speaking. Something's always better than nothing. But there comes a time when, in order for you to accumulate wealth, you've got to take unmitigated risks, almost foolhardy risks, where go to the casino type of thing. And so the advocacy that I provide my clients, especially my young ones, is start the wealth accumulation stage very early on in life. The sooner the better, because then, as you said, to your point, you have money and time, and that is a very powerful combination.
I know that there's also something that's been referred to as a living will, and that this is a trend that's sort of been picking up a bit of steam where older Canadians or maybe retired Canadians are handing some cash over to their kids to sort of help buy a property to get a little bit of that generational wealth going earlier. Is that something you're seeing as well? And does that sort of create potential problems down the road if, they're giving this money away as a gift sooner than they should?
The long answer is it depends. I'll boil it down to something in less than a minute. There are potential dangers with respect to ownership and claiming ownership when one gifts money to a child or a grandchild during one's life. The worst extreme being, what happens if you become estranged? What happens if they blow that money at the racetrack, so to speak? And I've seen that happen before. On the other hand, when that money is used for such a thing as a down payment on a principal residence, that can be very useful. And I always say to my clients, if giving gives you pleasure and you've got the money and you've got the relationships, gift while you're alive. Because the the 20-somethings looking to get into their first house is a very difficult thing to do, given salaries, given the cost of living, and given GTA real estate prices, which, while have come down, are still out of reach for the masses.
Well, and yeah, there have been other surveys among younger Canadians who have even gone so far as to say they're never going to own a home. That's just something that's not an option for them.
And you're right. It's true. And I think it's pretty sad not to own your principal residence at a point in time as early as possible. And that's what I did. I scrimped and I begged, borrowed, and saved to buy my first house as early as possible many years ago. And the same holds true, I believe, for today. And give the Fed some credit. What with programs like the RSP, and more specifically the relatively new First Home TFSA, FHSA as it is called, that is something that I believe as many people as possible should make available to themselves. It's a useful tool in order to stimulate the buying of the first home.
You know, just for people who don't understand, compound interest can be your best friend.
Absolutely, and I wish to comment on that very quickly. What is compound interest? Call it in layman's terms as growth on the growth of your money, but it starts out relatively boring. It's like a slow drip, but give it time and it turns into a waterfall. And if you look at the mathematical difference between saving $100 a month invested at 7%, what happens after 30 years and 40 years? Well, after 30 years, you've got $122,000. Pretty good. But after 40 years, $262,000. Significantly more for your total investment of $12,000 over those last 10 years. And that illustrates so perfectly the point, Kris, that saving early with a discipline is the way to go. And human beings, because we're all human and we all suffer from the human condition, so to speak, funny how it works that when one seeks out professional advice, whether a tax preparer, a doctor, a lawyer, somebody to fix your car, a dentist, funny how the result is generally better. But sadly, so many people just don't seek out professional advice. And I think that's a very oft missed point in the mix, because a professional and caring advisor will keep you on path, on strategy, and on discipline, and help you through those turbulent times where there's moving pieces, where there's lifestyle uncertainty. And let's face it, we all have lifestyle uncertainty. And that's one key point that I wish just to put out there as well.
The other thing I want to add, because you and I have spoken on and off for years, you don't need to have $1 million to have a financial advisor.
Correct. That's a big myth. Oh, only the wealthy have an advisor. Not so. Another big myth is, well, I'm young, so like I've got 40 years, so why would I worry about that now? And the other one I hear all the time, well, I'm 50 something, I'll be okay. I'll be retired in a few years' time, so why would I need an advisor? Those are three myths I could speak for a long time about, but in the interest of time, I won't. But those are myths.
The other thing I want to ask you is just the way, and this might be a hard question to answer, but the way this was framed, Canadians say their parents had it easier. Do you think that's true?
Yes. Why do I say it's true? For a few reasons. Number one, inflation then wasn't what it is now. Two, there were less options. More options does not necessarily equal better. Three, there were more defined benefit contribution plans, which, to paraphrase you, has gone the way of the dodo. And four, societal pressure to spend and to embrace debt was far less intense then than it is now.
When I was growing up, debt was a bad word.
You're so right, like me. And now I speak for my late 20-year-old children. They're very, very, very comfortable with debt. Many of them graduate deep in debt as a result of school. And yeah, they finish paying that off by the time they're 35. And then what? And yes, debt today is viewed as part of life. And that is a big shift from our generation and even my parents' generation.
Also interesting, and I feel like, the shifts are potentially permanent going forward. It's just a different time for younger Canadians, Generation Z and the millennials and beyond.
Yep, I do believe that change is permanent. It's not going to go away. And if anything, it's a trend that more than likely, in my opinion, is going to continue to gather steam.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time today to sort of offer some input and some advice around all of this. I think there was some really important information in there. So thank you so much for doing this.
I thank you, Kris. The pleasure is mine in joining with you today. Thanks.
John Sacke is investment advisor and portfolio manager at BMO Private Wealth. You can find more information at bmo.com. That wraps up this episode of The Big Story. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this conversation. You can send us an email at hello@thebigstorypodcast.ca. You can reach us on Instagram at FrequencyPods or on Blue Sky at The Big Story. And if you know someone that might enjoy this episode, please send it to them. You can listen to The Big Story every day on the Seeker app or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Kris McCusker. Thanks for listening.